In the meantime, though, have you seen any sold signs in your neighborhood recently? I actually saw one in mine. I was kind of surprised. That is just the way the real estate market is these days, right? Now, it's pretty clear that prices have come down, but have they come down enough for people to afford to buy, especially when mortgage rates are not exactly at their lowest and budgets are very tight for people? So people are still thinking of ways to get into the market, but they're having to get creative. And that's when different types of housing come into play. For instance, would you consider buying a place with someone else? Being a co-owner? Sure, that's come up in the past. People do this, right? But what about buying and living together? That is called co-housing, and it's becoming more popular, especially in places like the UK. But honestly, it sounds very tricky to me to have that close financial and personal relationship with other people. It could go sideways, and then what do you do? What is the key to making that work? Well, Tanya Walker might have the answer to that. Tanya's a litigation lawyer and managing partner at Walker Law and joins us now. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tanya, I get wary when I hear about arrangements like this. So can they work?
Yes, they can, but I think that there should be enough documentation signed and agreed on so then you reduce the amount of problems you have in the future.
Okay, like what? What kind of documentation do you think we need?
Well, think of it as a prenup, right? And you don't want to think about the divorce before you get married, but the reality is that it might happen. And so you might want to consider the ownership percentages of your mortgage and tax responsibilities, who's paying for what, maintenance costs. You might think that you're moving in with a colleague or a friend, but that friend thinks it's okay to rent out a portion of the property as an Airbnb or to rent to a third party, and that might not make you feel comfortable. So that should be also stipulated in your agreement. Suppose there's a conflict resolution. The roof needs to be replaced. Do you think it does? Since your friend thinks it does. How are you going to deal with conflict? And who's going to pay for that roof? A check-in meeting, just make sure everybody is on the same page periodically. And also your exit strategy. I had a case once where my clients wanted to sell the property, but the other side did not. And so we won in court where the property was ordered to be sold. And the other side had the belief, well, we were going to hold on to this property for about 5 years. Unfortunately, there wasn't any documentation substantiating that. So it was very difficult for a judge to decide we must hold on to the property for a number of years. What's going to happen if somebody dies? What's going to happen if you move in with a couple and that couple gets divorced? What are you going to do if everybody wants to sell the property or somebody does? And how are you going to price it out? How are you going to deal with that? Like, are you going to agree to buy their share, get an appraisal? Are you going to agree for the property to be sold on the open market? Well, there's so much to consider.
I know. And Tanya, listening to you list all that stuff, it makes me wonder why people do this, to be honest with you. And people do, don't they?
They do. And there's many advantages to that. I mean, as a litigator, I deal with the disadvantages. But the advantage is that it's more affordable to live in certain areas, say Vancouver or Toronto, where I'm from. If you divide the cost among a certain amount of people, you share the financial burden while you are probably increasing your credit in the meantime so you can invest in a more expensive property in the future. You have access to more properties than you probably would if you were buying on your own. So you have more kind of versatility there. And also sometimes there's some flexibility with the relationship because you can be quite isolated nowadays with hybrid work or even fully remote work. And so if you are sharing a property with a colleague, a friend, or someone that you met, that companionship can help in terms of you not feeling as isolated. And it may be better than renting because when you rent, you have a landlord. The landlord kind of says how much the rent is going to increase by. You may not actually receive anything financially when you decide to move, but when you own a property, if you decide to move, that's an investment and you may receive something.
Okay, but it sounds to me like what you're saying is in order to make this work, you need to spell every single thing out for every possibility. Even if you think it's not needed, you still have to spell it out. I
recommend that because then if you don't, then someone comes to me and I'm forced to explain to a judge what you agreed on or what's reasonable. And so you spend more money that way in litigation fees. So it might be better to invest in a great agreement, a kind of co-ownership agreement that spells everything out, and you meet periodically to make sure everybody's on the same page to avoid that problem. But at least if you do, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be easy for a court to decide what to do because it's already spelled out.
Right. But some of the things that you talked about there, I'm guessing that people don't do that because, we're friends, we'll be fine. Like that kind of attitude.
Yes, it happens more often than not. I've been a lawyer for 20 years, and I've never seen a co-ownership agreement or of that nature. Maybe because if there is one, they wouldn't need me. But I see problems because it's a handshake deal, and one person's thinking
really?
Another thing.
People buy a house on a handshake deal, like we'll be fine?
Well, sure. If you've been friends for 20, 30 years, yes, they do. And so then you have problems where a friend is renting out a room and they don't want that room to be rented. They don't want what quote unquote strangers in their property that one person wants to sell, the other person doesn't want to sell. Even dispute resolution, one person wants to go to court, the other person wants to mediate first. So I've seen many problems come up from this situation, and I think it could probably be reduced if everybody just agrees on all the possibilities before they buy this property together, so that it will minimize any misunderstandings in the future.
Well, it's good advice. But again, Tanya, if everybody took it, I guess you'd be out of business.
Right. It keeps you very busy. It keeps you very busy. But even it would reduce the amount of time in court. And so I do feel very sympathetic when a client comes to me and I'm trying to explain to a judge what the parties agreed on and why we're there. And I'm looking at emails and text messages and WhatsApp messages, and I'm trying to piece everything together rather than just saying this is what the document says.
Right. Well, thank you very much for giving us that warning this morning. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. That's Tanya Walker, litigation lawyer, managing partner at Walker Law. I keep seeing all these stories about co-housing. What a great idea this is. People buying and living together in a shared space and making that work. As long as you make sure you spell everything out in detail and don't just think, we're friends or we're family, we'll make this work, it'll be fine. No, it won't be. Make sure you have everything in writing.